Welcome to the Moon God Pod. I'm your host, JwowLax, and today we always have my guy, Loveox, in the bottom, and we're going across the pond all the way down to Africa, Nigeria specifically, with I am Meta Mike. He is a moon god. He is a mover and shaker. I've been following your social medias, and if there is a party to be had on this big, marble floating in the sky, like it is got to have you there. Um,
Yeah.
Definitely wanted to have you on. It's great that you're a moon god, but I'm just so fascinated with learning more about you and your story. So first, I want to just say welcome, and kind of just give us the elevator pitch as to who is Meta Mike.
Okay, so thank you very much for having me. Firstly, I understand I'm the first guest of 2023.
Kicking
You
it
know,
off big, kicking it off big.
well, I mean, I like that. I like that. I like that. We try to do it real big. So I mean, who am I? I mean, like I'm Meta Mike, I guess these days. I've been known by many monikers over the years. But I guess, when I got into NFTs, I changed that moniker. Before Meta Mike, I was known as Magic Mike for years as well.
Tell me
So
you
it
were a
depends
magician.
on
Tell me you were a magician.
Nah, not a real magician, but I used to do magic. I think I did some magic in my time anyway, in my career, as a music executive primarily. But I've worn many hats, as in like I've been in investment banking, I've been in politics, I've been a farmer, but I've probably longest been in the music industry, in the UK, and across the continent of Africa. So yeah, man, that's been Meta Mike, as in like on a day-to-day. I run one of the biggest studios out in Lagos, Nigeria. It's called the Free Me Space. I have a label and a distribution company called Free Digital. So we're into A&R production, marketing, distribution, label services, and what have you. Worked with some of the biggest Afrobeats acts out of Nigeria, Wizkid, Davido, Burna Boy. Work with some of the biggest brands, I guess, in the world, but like, the primarily with their HQs in Africa. When we're saying brands, I'm like Essence Magazine, Hennessy, Big Brother Africa, MTV Base. We've even done content with Jimmy Fallon during the COVID lockdowns. Davido came and did his Jimmy Fallon Tonight Show shoot at my space. And years before that, anyway, I ran Sony Music West Africa. So with Sony Music, I oversaw a catalog of about 5 million tracks. The greats like Travis Scott, Michael Jackson, our Afrobeats greats like Wizkid and Davido. I signed them to the label. Those were US deals actually. Wizkid to RCA in the USA, Davido to Colombia out in the UK. And then yeah, man, I think whilst I was there, whilst I ran Sony Music, I probably brokered the biggest telecommunications deal out of sub-Saharan Africa, which was signing the Sony Music catalog to MTN. MTN is the biggest telecommunications company on the continent. They have about 60 to 70 million subscribers on their network. Took me about 2 years to broker that deal. And yeah, man, we got the deal done, I think, in 2018 or so. And that kind of like just introduced a lot of international music, international content to a local telecommunications company, a big one at that. That was the first major label to do that kind of deal on the continent. Universal and Warner kind of like used our playbook a couple of years later and did their own deals as well. I mean, that was when I ran Sony. I also sit on the board of a company called, or a network company called Merlin. Merlin is like a fourth major label. So all the big independents across the world, Beggars Music, Secretly Canadian, Domino Records, Sub Pop, Jaguar, M Theory, K7, big independents in the US, in the UK, Germany, Africa, India, wherever. I'm one of the board members on Merlin. We paid out. I mean, the Merlin network paid out about $2 billion to about 900 label members in 2021. And Merlin has existed since 2008. I've sat on the board of Merlin for the last 3 years or so, and sit alongside some amazing independent label owners. And then yeah, man, for fun, I kind of like angel invest. Web3 companies primarily. I love what's going on in the Web3 space. So NFT plays, crypto plays. Most recently, I invested in a network stake called Afropolitan. Michael Siebel, a bunch of guys from YC, and even Balaji were angel investors on that deal as well. They're literally just trying to build out a network stake representing Africans, primarily in the diaspora and on the continent of Africa. And yeah, collect NFTs. I guess that's why we're on this call, and that's probably the most important thing. But I collect NFTs. My wife thinks I'm a bit of a nut, but yeah, man, it is what it is, and I have so much fun collecting NFTs and just like spreading the gospel of this amazing innovative technology. To be honest.
I am Meta Mike. Welcome to the podcast. For those listeners who do not have video, Meta Mike is very fly. He's got his Aku t-shirt on. He's got these wonderful shades. My man is crushing it right now. So as a man of African descent, could you please talk to us about maybe the penetration of NFTs in Africa? Are Africans, are they involved in the NFT space? And how is that growing over time?
So yes, I think that look, globally, markets down. We've seen a lot of people kind of like run away from the space. And, in Africa, so Africa's a big continent, 54 countries. I'm based out of Nigeria, which is the biggest country in Africa population-wise, 200 million people. So kind of like whatever happens in Nigeria kind of like impacts the rest of the continent. We are that influential country across the 54 countries. So yeah, we like during the 2021 kind of like hype cycle, we did see a lot of Nigerians get involved in the space. We saw a lot of people launch projects. I think one of the first projects I actually really supported and advised on was done by a friend of mine called Owo Aniete. It was called Afrodroids, and I was already a crypto punk by this time already. I'd already been buying NFTs and Nifty Gateway, and that was probably one of the biggest NFT projects out of the Nigerian space. It was obviously the height of the bull market, minted out 12,000 plus Afro droids, ended up donating about $500,000 to an orphanage out in Lagos. So that NFT drop actually had massive social impact, in Nigeria. And it kind of like became like the kind of like project that a lot of people were looking to try and replicate. So yes, there is NFT activity. It's clearly not as, the velocity of these projects coming out, the velocity of people collecting is clearly not like what's happening in the Asian markets, in the Western markets. But it is there. There has been some stagnation over the last 6 to 9 months. But there's still people like me who are still preaching the gospel, doing what I can to like put on events, get people kind of like into the space. And I'm a big believer that this is the best time to actually start understanding and learning about NFTs, learning about underlying technology. So I think that's something that's very important that gets overlooked a lot, right? And then kind of like just, finding communities and joining communities that make sense to you. And one of the reasons why I started my community, Metaphrase, was just because I'm part of, I'm not a big fan of Discord. I do like physical stuff, like, you guys see on my socials, I'm out and about, right? I'm always trying to like connect IRL. So I started my community with NFTs, and Web3 is kind of like the foundation, but it's more about that human contact. Like, how do we understand this technology? What are the pros? What are the cons? How does it impact Nigerians? How does it impact Africans? How can we actually take advantage of this technology to better, our lot? So yeah, as in like it's activity is there, down across the board like everywhere else, but some very, very serious players are looking at this market, and I'm doing what I can to kind of like help grow this market as well.
Take us back to, you've had, your elevators, your elevator pitch was, we were obviously on the Empire State Building, like, because you've done so much. That's a compliment,
yeah.
And that's that. I love it. And like, there's obviously like with all the music and entertainment. So, one of the things that drew a lot of people to this space, one was like financial gains. Like, let's not forget the elephant in the room, but also just the art. And I want to get, specifically to Aku, but what was your first kind of bridge and entry into crypto in general and in NFTs? Like, what was the first NFT project where you were kind of like, oh, I'm in on that? What was your Eskimo?
So, look, the truth of the matter is, okay, if we take it back, right? I've been in crypto probably since 17. But I was just buying Bitcoin, buying bits of Ethereum, getting to understand, what crypto is about. Because like everybody, I'd heard about it, thought it was some big Ponzi scheme. Crypto doesn't have great press and it hasn't had great press over the years. And at the time, I actually started having challenges, and it happens across the continent. You have challenges moving money around the world, right? Especially if you use, I have UK bank accounts, I have, European bank accounts, but when I'm doing transactions out of Africa, there's always issues, right? And so my first kind of like introduction to Bitcoin was I was trying to broker a deal, and there was a trader in China, and he was willing to accept Bitcoin because he was like, look, this transfer coming out of Nigeria, he doesn't know how long it's going to take. He's not sure about the bank that I'm talking about. Like, can you buy Bitcoin and send it? And that was my first kind of like, all right, cool. I was like, so this thing that I assumed people used to buy drugs, Silk Road and all this kind of stuff couldn't be used for something else, right? So I bought some Bitcoin, sent it. I was like, it was pretty easy to buy. It wasn't so hard. And I was like, it's interesting. Let me just kind of like look at this a bit closer, right? And then I started what I think my first introduction. I think I heard something from Chamath Palihapitiya, right, about Bitcoin and about how it was insurance just in case the whole world went to shit. Started looking a little bit more into economic reasons behind Bitcoin, philosophical, political reasons behind Bitcoin. Still wasn't completely sold, but I'm an investor, so I was like, let me just buy it just in case. It's insurance, right? You want to have a little bit of something in case, enough to say, okay, I've got a taste of it, but enough to also say if it goes to zero, I'm good. So that was my first kind of like foray into the space. And then obviously you go down the rabbit hole. Ethereum was the next thing kind of like on my list, and understood it, looked at it like this kind of like big app store. I was like, oh wow, the iOS app store and the Play Store. Imagine if I can own shares in the Play Store and apps. I mean, obviously you can buy Apple stock and whatnot, but if they're going to build all these amazing things in this kind of like blockchain space, that could be interesting. Again, I'm the kind of person, I buy something, put a little skin in the game. Once I have skin in the game, then I'm kind of like forced to understand it. So I'm a bit of a risk taker like that. I don't hold back. I'll buy and then I'll be like, all right, cool. I need to understand what this is. So I got money on it now, right? And so that's how I got into Ethereum. And then I was in investment banking years ago. And so I've always been one to be like diversifying my portfolio, not just music. I'm into real estate. I'm into angel investing. I do buy obviously stocks. I don't trade, but I'm a long-term investor and what have you. And at some point, I was actually looking at diversifying into fine art. No specific reason behind it. But I just felt like, this is another interesting asset class to look at and to learn about, right? So I'd contacted Christie's, I think this is like probably 2019 or 18 or something. And I was like, trying to understand the process around their auctions. And then also contact another company called Masterworks, who do this kind of like, where you buy these blue chip traditional artists, and you just buy, I guess, shares in them. It's like fractional shares in these pieces, like you can buy a Banksy piece, and you buy it with other investors. And I didn't like the whole process, to be quite honest. I felt it was inaccessible for me. I'm primarily on the continent of Africa. I first felt that there was a kind of like vibe I got from that, like when I said, "Oh, yeah, I do business out of Africa."
Trust. They trust you.
Yeah, like, well, maybe we don't want African clients. No one said that to me, but I got that vibe, right? And then, as I was, in the crypto space, partially, I came across NFTs. And I was literally like, okay, so I'm looking at, actually investing into fine art. I started having conversations, in the CryptoPunks Discord about, other things in the NFT space. And, people were talking about, oh, well, crypto art, I think, we've called it so many different names. But crypto art can be something amazing in the future. There are all these artists, coming onto Super Rare, doing this, doing that. Ferocious's name had come up. X Copy's name had come up in a couple of conversations. Art Blocks had come up in a couple of conversations. And I had my Ethereum wallet. I had Ethereum, it was accessible, right? It was not inaccessible like Christie's or like Masterworks. It was super accessible. So I think the first piece I bought a piece from a Black artist called Is He Alright on Super Rare. And I tweeted, and then the Super Rare team was so excited. Oh, wow, welcome to the space. They followed me on Twitter. And I was like, wow, this felt super welcoming, right? So my first kind of like foray into NFTs was via Super Rare. And then, you know, I started coming across other artist pieces, and then Ferocious, Trevor Jones, and then the whole Nifty Gateway thing. So yeah, I mean, in a roundabout way, I wouldn't say that it was that speculative, you know, fervor that drove me into the NFT space. I was looking at diversification. I was looking at different asset classes, and you know, just based on my reading, based on where I saw the market move into, I did feel that there would be some kind of opportunity in the digital asset space, and that is crypto and its NFTs, right? So that's what got me into NFTs.
So I have two questions. I guess my first question is, in your journey in the NFT space, have you come across many people of color? And if you have, like, how has that conversation been? And then number two, how did you find Aku? Like, I know you're a Nifty Gateway veteran. That's kind of I was a Nifty Gateway aficionado myself. Just curious as to how that journey was.
So no, I don't come across a lot of people of color. And, you know, I try not to make it, you know, something of concern. I'm more like, do something about it, right? So hanging out with CryptoPunks, because we do have some IRL kind of like meetups in London. I'm part of the CryptoPunks London Twitter group. There's another Telegram group that's primarily kind of like CryptoPunks out of the US. Obviously I'm in with the Bored Apes and all that. And you know, going to like the festivals, going to the hangouts, yeah, you don't see a lot of Black guys in the room. I mean, it's usually, I mean, I've met maybe two, maybe three in the CryptoPunks hangouts, you know, a couple more in the Bored Apes. And I mean, it just is what it is. I mean, like, look, we haven't been early adopters of this technology. And so I think when I came back from NFT NYC 2021, I think that was the first one I spoke at. I was like, yo, like, this needs to change. And, you know, I kind of need to do something about it. I can't wait for people to do something for me. So I was like, cool, let me just try and start a community. And that's how I actually just started my community, Metaphrase. Just, and I guess the literal translation of Metaphrase is just translation, right? It's trying to make something complex, simple. And I was like, cool, let me just start it because I'm moving ahead in this space. And when I say ahead, I just mean like in terms of gaining knowledge, growing my network, building up some cachet, some cultural cachet in this space. And I want to see more brothers, more sisters kind of like doing it. Because I think that if this technology goes where we all think it's going to go to, it's like the internet, you know, years and years ago, like a couple decades ago, right? If you were early to .com domain names, if you were early to the internet, somehow it paid off. Whether it was an experience or whether that was in financial gain, it paid off somehow. And I think being early to the crypto space and being early to the NFT space will pay off in experience and financially as well. So yeah, I do what I can to encourage people of color to get into the space. Like I've had a bunch of hangouts in London, in Lagos, when I was in Singapore, New York at NFT NYC. So NFT NYC 2022, I actually went back and did like 2 parties in Manhattan. And that was in partnership with the network state that I said I invested in, a company called Afropolitan. We did a party in, I think, Scorpios in Manhattan. And that was literally like, how do we kind of like bring Africans in the diaspora together and Black people in the Web3 space together to hang out, drink, network, and kind of like just, you know, understand what each of us are doing and what potential value we can be to one another.
So when you see Aku for the first time in your introduction to Micah Johnson, like kind of like tell us about that, because like you're saying like there's, you know, you can see it when you go to these conventions and conferences and all, there's an underrepresentation. And here's a guy that is definitely all about representing.
Right, 100%. And that's what got me into Aku. So yeah, I was, big on the Nifty Gateway drops. And came across Micah Johnson, and I was like immediately sold. I mean, firstly, the Genesis piece was just dope. It was just sick. It was a sick piece of art, right? And I've always been the kind of person where the litmus test for me, when it comes to NFTs, because I said I came at it looking at it like that fine art investment. It needs to look good on my wall, right? I have to do the wall test. And that Genesis piece was like dope. I wasn't even really too, I wasn't looking at anything past that. I hadn't really done a lot of research into Micah, but I saw that piece. I briefly found out that he was an ex Major League Baseball player, and I was kind of like sold. I mean, me getting to know Micah and the team, that came way after. And obviously, just based on that, that's what I got, the full set for myself and my wife. And have just been locked in. Anytime that I've been too busy flying and I've missed a drop, I've immediately picked it up on the secondary. So once I understood the kind of like the goal of building out these moon gods and what a moon god could be, I was like, look, whatever this dude is doing, I'm supporting it, right? Because if I'm supporting all these other projects, they've been great, financial gain wise, like. When I bought my CryptoPunk, the floor has been way above that since, same as my Bored Ape. I was early to a bunch of these things. But for me, I was like, how do I support my brother? And it was, for me, I've done that across the board. And I think I even narrowed that down. I was like, look, like there's a lot of activity in North America. I have to also support artists on my continent. And that's what made me even start doing more, like, bringing up artists like Osinachi, who's a super rare artist, Anthony Ezekuo, who's also a super rare artist. They've also done drops in Nifty Gateway, Async Art, and other things. And that's what made me start supporting and doing more and investing and just trying to be there for them as well. Because I think what we have on the content is a dearth of collectors like myself. When I jump in and out of different discords, there's a lot of activity. Let me say there's a lot more activity because we all know our space is pretty small. It may seem massive, but it is pretty small on that macro basis. So yeah, man, what Micah does, I support it, I love it, and I will keep buying, keep supporting. I think I'm probably like the third biggest holder of Akutars right now. I think I have like 150 maybe.
100. You've got some. We know Aramanu he's got to be number one. Him and Pransky.
No. I'm just behind Pransky. Pransky's got like 250. I got more than Aramanu.
My man.
He has a dope collection. Like he probably has a better vetted collection than me. But I have more than Supermassive as well. I think I think Aramanu's fourth or fifth.
Well, you just called him out, and what everyone that's listening to this, be careful because there might be a sweep coming soon.
Check it, Meta Magic Vault. Go check the Meta Magic Vault. I think I'm like 150 Akutars. Yeah, or 100, 145 to 100. I forget. Some days I just wake up and buy like 5, and then I forget how many I'm on. I'm seeing like 0.02, and I'm like, you dudes are crazy. Done in the shopping bag. I'm out.
So we always ask, are you a chapters guy or an Akutars guy?
So culturally wise, I love the chapters, right? Like I have 2 sets. I know guys have way more than that. I've got 2 sets. It's one for me, one for my wife. But I mean, I like the Akutars, and I've gifted quite a few. And it's always harder to gift. Like I get a chapter, I've gifted them. The connection is a bit harder unless you're deeper in the project, right? With an Akutar, you instantly use it as your profile picture. And everybody that I've gifted, and it's literally only like I did a dinner in December. Micah graciously jumped on a live stream to talk to my community, and we gave away an Akutar that day. Instantly, Benga, who won the Akutar, used it as his profile picture. So I think there's a lot of power in digital identity, which is also why I still hold my CryptoPunk and my Bored Apes, my mutants stuff, because I think there's a play around that digital identity as we move forward into the metaverse or whatever anyone wants to call it. So originally chapters guy, I get it. It's the foundational piece of this whole thing. There's no such thing as Akutas to me when I started buying chapters. These are pieces I can hang on my wall. These are pieces I can play for my kids. These are pieces that have stories behind them, and they're art to me. But the Akutas, yeah, I think for that multiplier effect, Akutas are probably more powerful than chapters, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. You touched on identity, and that's a topic that's come up a number of times on the pod, where the apes and the punks, like you can really identify with what you with the likeness. Now there is a bit of an issue with the Akutars and the Megas, in the sense that it's a visor, and while maybe you're into surfing or skateboarding or ice cream or whatever, so there are identifiers, but the personality of the other projects, is that an issue going forward, do you think, or is it just something that separates us that can actually be a positive?
Yeah, I do think about that sometimes. I think that but for me, like, the concept of Aku was, it's kind of black kid being astronaut. So the space helmet was always part and parcel of the DNA, right? I do think that, yes, identifiers can be helpful, and it's great that we do have some identifiers, like the surfboards, the backpacks, the open chests, and everything. But somewhere, somehow, honestly speaking, deep in my mind, I feel like there's going to be some reveal at some point down the road, right? As in, like, the nature of IP is that it develops, and it needs to develop to the point it meets the needs of the market. I do think there is a conversation to be had about that. I do think that, as Aku is, yes, the helmet is part of the DNA, but then at some point, what can happen? We're not in a static space, right? Things can change. These, contracts can be updated, and whatnot. But as is, I love it, right? I do love it. I do think that, yes, with the punks, with the apes, those communities, it's also about the power of the community, right? I think that, as the community grows, and as the kind of like law of Aku grows, I think that, how loud the community gets could also be an important factor in driving forward, Aku helmet or no helmets. I think it's not necessarily about the look of the NFT. It's also about how loud and how braggadocious, the NFT founder is, how braggadocious the NFT community is, and how much we hype the project. And then that could also be the selling point as well. Like, yes, he has a helmet, but he has all these other identifiers. So I don't try to get too stuck on, certain attributes like that. But yes, it has crossed my mind. It has definitely crossed my mind. The fact that Aku is hidden behind this helmet.
I find it super interesting in the NFT space how important that braggadocious piece is, right? So I think by nature, I'm more of a I'll let my work stand for me kind of person, but boy, that does not work in the NFT space. There's a certain kind of Gary V that you must have to kind of really put things in motion where they could be. I think my question is, let's say that you had tomorrow, we're going to name you the official Aku advisor, right? And you can do two things to move this project forward. What would they be?
I mean, like, firstly, my background in music, I mean, like, big bang, man. It's like, you need to go hard or you need to go home, right? Firstly, I would align Aku squarely with the music industry, primarily. I mean, culturally, it is like, it's the milk that all brands use to get into our psyche. And I guess that's just from my perspective, that's where my strength lies. I would be looking at, which kind of, ambassadors can we align with? I mean, because I think that, it's great that we have these kind of like affiliations. Murder Bravado, I'm a big fan of Murder Bravado. I mean, I know I think he sold his Aku or whatever, but I'm a big fan of his brand nonetheless. I buy a lot of his stuff. I mean, Puma, all of like the custom partners on what have you, these kind of like affiliations with Spring Hill, with Planes, with BBC. I mean, I think these things are all great, but I think that there's also something missing in terms of how these things are being hyped. And sometimes it's not about going across the board. Sometimes it's about drilling down deep with one partner and like going ham on some kind of like, brand building, big bang type activation. And I think that's one thing that I've learned in the entertainment industry. Like you need to kind of like have that big bang moment, and then you need to kind of like tempo an idea around something and then just like amplify the hell out of it, across all mediums. And I think sometimes the NFT space, things get lost in translations because it's quite a complex space. Teams are still experimenting, teams are trying to figure stuff out. And I guess what I've learned about Aku, more so Micah, the founder, is, that level of kind of like under promise, over deliver. So it's more that kind of like honest, organic growth that I think the team is kind of like going for, which I think is fair. I like Big Bang, but I'm also, I can also be conservative. And for me, Aku is kind of like that conservative project right now. I don't think it necessarily should be. I think it's a beacon in the space, and it's founded, pushed, and run by a Black guy, right? And culturally speaking, right, we set the trends, we set the pace.
Love
you're talking about Drake, you're talking about Jay-Z's, old school Wayne, you're talking about NBA Youngboy. Clothes, what we eat, what we wear. That's why Afrobeats is getting so big, because we're cool. We're cool. We make things happen, right? And I think that, Micah, but maybe that's not Micah's personality. And I think if that's the case, I think Roger's dope. I love how he kind of like is super kind of like, he's granular with his detail, he's honest, he's open, and he's like a dope ambassador for the project. But I do think like Aku needs to be sexier, and whatever that means, right? And I'm a big believer in brand alignment. I'm not saying get sexier and call Kim Kardashian. Nah, that's not brand alignment, right? As sexy as she may be in whatever she can sell, it's wrong. That's not the DNA of Aku. But there are a lot of sexy brand. I'm not talking about sexy female only. Like, as in like there's a lot of guys out there, sports stars, movie stars, right? Black men, Black women, whoever, influencers who have that sexy that we need, right? And I think that's the first thing I'll kind of like look at. Now, some people may look at that and be like, oh, well, that's just skin deep, right? Mm-hmm. But this is the space that we're in right now. I don't know everybody who's like the other day, someone was talking to me, oh, Mike, what do you think's like a good play right now? And I'm like, yo, you know me, I'm always going to sell you Aku first. And they're like, yeah, but Aku moves kind of like slow. Like, what do I think about Moonbirds? Like Clonex has given all of their holders this, Moonbirds haven't done that. And I'm like, yeah, but you can't look at this thing in I get the speculation factor, right? But as in like Aku is it for me for now. I think you could look at this, look at that, look at the third. But if we're talking about long plays, I'm always going to tell you buy Aku, just hold it, support the project, get to understand it. But they're looking for sexy. They're looking for that, that kind of like tempo flag that says that we're here, we're cool, we're culturally relevant, and we're not just culturally relevant, we're influential, and we're leading the space based on our cultural prowess.
A couple things there, Mike. Like when you every time you say sexy, like the Bored Ape hoodie, it's just a hoodie with a monkey head on it. Like
fashion is dead, bro.
But when I see it, it's to me the same as somebody wearing a Rolex or pulling up in a Lambo. Like I remember the first NFT NYC, and dudes just had a pin of CryptoPunks, and I remember like some influencer rapper sat there and is like, man, I'm sitting here dripped with like these $100,000 chains, and this dude's got a pin on flexing harder than me. Like that's real, the other side, like where maybe that's not Micah's character, but like if you are doing something good, like, yes, being humble, but like, there's nothing wrong with attention being brought on, like celebrities, always do this charity work where the cameras aren't being seen, and that's great. But if it's a cause, like that's why they have the 5Ks for breast cancer or the fundraisers. Like you have to raise awareness. And I think that these other projects, while they're just projects, this is more of a movement. And, to the point about the celebrities being involved, like we've just in this country, especially with everything that's gone on the last couple of years. And you know, Micah even had one of his first Nifty Gateway pieces was George Floyd. Like we have all these big megaphone athletes that are, you know, like this is so important. And here is like that, like you're saying, a beacon that really can be amplified, and they're just not, you know, either they don't know about it or they're just not kind of amplifying it, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. But like I said, it comes down to personality. You know, that sexy factor doesn't work for everybody. And I think with, you know, I mean, even Bored Apes, like saying, firstly, yeah, I rock my Bored Ape, like in Singapore, I rock my Bored Ape hoodie, and yeah, like the flex is crazy, right? The fashion within and of itself to me is dead. Like I've tweeted this thing a bunch of times. I you know, got the t-shirts, got the hoodies, and it's, you know, they're nice to have and everything, but it's not dope fashion wise. I mean, Murder Bravado is a partner. I rock my Murder Bravado, like jeans and t-shirts, you know, everywhere. Upscale Vandal is on the. I've been following Upscale Vandal for years. This guy is cool as hell, right? As in, like, I think when it comes to that cultural coolness, there are people actually on the project that I think, you know, probably, I don't know if the right word is could do more. You know, I don't know their full affiliations, contractual or whatnot with the company. But I mean, there's a lot that could be done there. And I think, yeah, the Bored Ape stuff, yeah, from a status perspective, I get that. I do get respect. You know, when I wear my CryptoPunks hat or my Bored Apes hoodie, and it's just like wearing Rolly AP or whatnot, you get that status, you know, respect. And I think that's cool. But I also think that, you know, being culturally cool has its own currency. And I think we just need to kind of like build on that. And then obviously with that come the financial gains, because like I said, I'm an investor. I'm here definitely to support Micah. But I mean, when I sweep and buy Akutars, it's also the kind of like, you know, that speculation, but more long-term speculation. I'm not looking for overnight gains. I'm more like, how can I invest in IP? When I support Micah, it's like I'm angel investing, right? How can I support this amazing IP and do what I can, do my bit to help it grow? But yeah, I do think that one of the concerns, and being in the CryptoPunks and the Bored Ape community, you know, a lot of CryptoPunks held a lot of disdain for the Bored Apes because there was all this that was very speculative. You know, holding a CryptoPunk, there's no real benefit. There's no airdrops. There's no team. There's no MoonPay buying up, you know, CryptoPunks and dashing them out. You know, so it's more like it's more based on belief of, I guess, the provenance is there for the punks, and then just the community. I do hold, you know, a Bored Ape and mutant apes and stuff, but the concern is there sometimes, like, yeah, what if the hype dies? What if this is a hype project for the next couple of years, and then without the hype, the project kind of dies away? So it's definitely a two-way kind of like, you know, I got to look at it from two ways. And yes, I do definitely think that Aku, Tars, you know, and Mike and the team could do more to kind of like raise the profile of this community, whether that's bringing someone on board or doing something like a big Big Bang temple kind of like activation. I'm not sure. And there's been some amazing activations. I mean, the whole Disney thing and all of that, you know, but then these are things that are just spoken about in our community. And sometimes I get worried, oh, is it that people don't care? Or is it that they're just not aware? Because in the music industry, when we put out music, you got to remember that there's a lot of information. Attention is spread so thin that if you're not spending enough to amplify that win, no one's going to know about it. And they're going to find out maybe organically 6 months, a year later about this amazing, dope artist that you've put out. But then the kid that you've put billboards across Africa, and you've paid money to go on radio, you've paid money to blast the videos on TV, you've kind of like paid to make sure he even maybe has, you know, we've done activations where we've paid influential females to be someone's girlfriend to move the story forward. It's all about the narrative in that entertainment space, right? And I don't think where we are with NFTs, it's far off. How do we move the narrative forward?
Mike, I think you've absolutely murdered this interview, and I think you've brought a spotlight to what I think is very important. I think if we look at it like a woman, right? We have this beautiful young lady. She's hot. She has an amazing body. She's fit. But there's just this one thing missing. Like she has everything we needed. It's just this one thing. And I feel like our one thing is nobody knows what we know. They don't know like all the high level details going on behind the scenes, that kind of thing. I guess a question for you, for somebody who's been kind of behind the scenes and doing deals and having various conversations, what kind of accountability can you hold a partner to? Right. So let's say that, hey, we have this affiliation with Aku, Puma, like now we need you to do X or Y. Is that a thing, or is that, I know you mentioned before, is it contractually obligated? But I'm curious as to, can we get them to help us, if that makes any sense?
I mean, like, yeah, they're supposed to be vested. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a hustler. If you ain't gonna help me, I'm gonna find who's gonna help me.
Exactly.
And there's a bunch of times out there.
Yeah.
I'm not waiting for you. I live a lot in Africa. It's survival, right? If you don't want to play ball with me, no problem. I'm taking my ball elsewhere.
Yeah.
Do you understand? And I think that, in business, I mean, you just can't you can't be nice. You can't be super nice. You can be friendly, you can be fair, you can be you can be honest, but you can't be super nice. You got to be a savage sometimes. And I think that, depending on what the contractual commitments are, if any, I would obviously push more on these brands. I think another concern, like right now, is obviously the state of the market. Like these brands only really rev up when everybody's kind of like hyped. So I get it. Sometimes you don't want to be spending budget. You don't want to be pushing money into kind of like this black hole where everything is down only. And I think, that's macro right now. It's not just NFTs. It's not just Aku. Everything is struggling. So timing wise, like, yeah, I would obviously, if I'm a commercial director on this project, I would understand that. But I would also be looking for the brands that understand that they need a win. And sometimes when I'm working with artists, I work with brands that need a win because they're hungry. Sometimes I don't want to work with people who have everything sorted out because they ain't hungry. Yeah. They're just gonna put me on the shelf. Oh yeah, we're gonna get back to you. We're gonna get round to you elsewhere. And I'm struggling, right? So I need to make sure, and even some of the artists I work with, I'm like, do you need a win? Like, if you need a win, let's work. Because if you don't need a win and you're just going to chill and your expectations are different, like, let's actually go to Sony or Uni, because I got all those relationships. We can do a deal, with some of the bigger boys. But I'm hustling, right? And I think that, that's where Aku is. Aku isn't that, it's not that Yuga Labs project right now. It's not that. It's not proof right now, right? But there's an amazing IP. There's an amazing founder with an amazing story. There's an amazing team. So on people like Summer, Roger, Rusty, Glitch, all the guys who are in and out. And there's an amazing community. Like I jump in and out of the Discord. I'm not heavy on talking on the Discord, but I'm in there sometimes listening to the conversations. And there's some amazing people. Like even some of the, I haven't watched all the Moon God pods, but I definitely watch a couple of them, and I'm like, yo, just interesting. This guy's the Moon God, and the community is so diverse, right? That there's power in that. And I don't know, maybe it's a timing thing. I'm all like, even Ferocious that I've been involved, with her career from the beginning. There's a lull in that community as well, and I think that there's a lull in all these communities, and somehow, some way, some people are just waiting for an uptick in the market to kind of like get that necessary, the needed amplification. And the amplification I'm talking about is more financial amplification. Because even if you amplify right now in this market, yeah, the narrative is there. We're all building in the bear, blah, blah, blah. But the challenge is that with the market from a macro perspective, that speculative factor is missing for now. And I definitely think that, look, this is the year, and I'm advising people, man, like if you want to make a change to your life next year, start looking and investing in projects now, buying the right kinds of projects, understanding the communities, and then wait for like 24. So yeah, man.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I won't give financial advice. I hate when people say as if like, oh, not financial advice, as if like one, anyone cares that much, and two, like that, that disclaims you from any liabilities. But as far as my thought, actually, I thought going into 2022 was going to be like kind of like tread water year. Like I was not prepared for the roller coaster we went on, which was fun and cool. Yeah. But I kind of was, especially with Aku, specifically, I was looking at other projects, like they're going to be the ones and Aku is just going to be like this smooth and steady, tortoise race. And we had this roller coaster. My idea was always 2023. So now if it's 23 is the building year and 24, is kind of hopefully the culmination. There's just so many different storylines that are changing in the world on the global economic side. Every time someone says to me about crypto and like, oh, they're not doing so well, and I'm like, well, how's your stocks? How's the equity on your house? Like, have you tried to buy a house? Like, the interest rates here in America are, higher than they've been in forever. Buying a car, like it used to be like 0% interest. It's not just us, but we get that big that kind of like cringe, and we've discussed it, today, like, the .com bubble, like in the mid 90s, Brian Gumbel's on TV sitting there talking about, so what's this whole internet and the email thing about? And oh, it's so cute, it's nice, but it's not going to stick around. And then the same thing, like Facebook and Twitter, my mom butchering it, like, are you on that Face Chat or that Snapbook and stuff? And she is addicted to TikTok now. I do think that we're early. And I think that there's concepts that 2023 will hopefully, those seeds that have been planted start being pretty fruitful. To stick with the whole Aku narrative, that there are so many different verticals that have been discussed. What is the number one vertical that you think you would like to see, but also would kind of perpetuate the project or help it grow?
When we say verticals, what exactly are we talking about in terms of the direction of the project?
They talk about the game, like a play to earn. There's obviously merchandise. There's the movie. There's education things. It feels like there's just so many. I can answer it for myself. Like, I don't need the movie out, but I know how. I live in Hollywood, in LA, and I know how Hollywood works. The Top Gun Maverick movie, that trailer came out like 4 years ago, and the movie just came out today. I have been hyped over a 45-second clip, just seeing like Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer and being like, whoa, what is this going to be? Like I like just a trailer for the movie, like a proof of concept, if that's even on the table,
Yeah, I mean, I like the educational piece.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I think that when I got into Aku, and that whole original question around can an astronaut be black, it kind of like resonated. As someone who I grew up in the UK schooling system. I think the first school I was in, I was probably the only black kid there. And so you kind of like feel that there are always these kind of like glass ceilings, right? Real, imagined, whatever the case may be. I definitely think that we've done really amazing things over the years to push that black excellence narrative forward. But I think this is kind of like there's also this evolution, and I think this goes further down the chain in terms of the age chain, where from that early age there should be no limitations, and where does that start? In the schools, right? So I do think that the education piece is a very interesting piece, and in this kind of like narrative around Elon Musk, SpaceX, what's the next frontier? Is it going to Mars? Is it this multi-planetary kind of like existence of humanity? Physics, the sciences, they all become part of the conversation. When we're talking about astronauts, it's not easy to become an astronaut, right? So I think that, the educational piece, getting more kids of color into the sciences, and having them, kind of like have that belief and that understanding that there is no kind of like ceiling to this. Black kids can be astronauts. We're not all, they're not all just, I guess like the typical white American could probably think that the average Nigerian is into 419 fraud and is some African prince. And I hear all the jokes in Discord, oh, the prince sent me this smell and blah, blah, blah. And it's become, part of culture, and I laugh at it as well. But it is kind of like, it paints a picture, right? And, I think the educational piece for me is definitely a piece that will be very important in order to grow the narrative.
We're kind of coming up on the end here, and so we need to wrap it up. There's two pieces that I thought were interesting, especially with your education, like mentioned, like, Neil Tyson, I never say his name right. Neil Tyson DeGrassi. You know who I'm talking about?
Statues, yeah.
Yeah, like there's another guy that has this educational reach. He's made education like popular on social media. Like that's a guy that like needs to know about Aku, and I don't think I think he's fairly accessible compared to, a LeBron or a Kevin Durant, or some pro athlete. So like there's a certainly something with that education that like a guy like that needs to be aware. I always kind of go back to the idea of Black Panther and how influential and powerful, especially the original Black Panther was. And I kind of see like Black Panther and Aku very similar, am I grasping at straws in that, or
no. I mean, to me, Aku is a Black superhero, right? He's a Black superhero. I mean, straight up, and we did see that with Black Panther. I mean, definitely is a kid, but I mean, look, it's where the imagination could stretch to, right? I think there's a lot that can come out of it, and we've seen how that impacted Hollywood and not just culturally, but the box office. That movie made bank, right? As in, so there is the demand there. I think years ago, I'd read something about how Hollywood wasn't really into like, these big budget Black movies because when they're thinking on a global basis, the movies may not be accepted in, countries like China, Russia, who may not be as open to this concept of a Black superhero, right? But I think, box office numbers for Black Panther proved it wrong. Like there is bank to be made there. And I do think that Aku has that, we hear that Mickey Mouse term, a lot around Aku and around the IP. But I mean, like, to me, he's a Black superhero. And I want Aku to be that kind of Black superhero that my kids grow up seeing and watching. And when I say, the vertical, like looking at, the education, I mean, like books, it's not hard to make like a comic book or a book, and put something out there. The stories are already there in the chapters. I mean, the stories are definitely already there. And there's a lot that Aku's doing already in the classroom. I think I've seen as a Twitter handle, is it Aku in the classroom or whatnot? There's a lot already happening in that environment and that's more like a quick win type thing. So no, you're not far off. Affiliating Aku with Black Panther, in my mind, anyway.
JwowLax, what are our closing thoughts, sir?
I echo the sentiments of both you guys, right? So when I look at Disney's cast of characters and their IP and what they developed, you can't tell me that there's not a seat at the table for an Aku type character. Like I think that the Black community is fawning over something to get behind, to put their energy behind, to fall in love with. So I think that Aku feels this huge void in the space that really wants something to fall behind. So I think everything that was said today really feeds into that. And I want to thank Mike for coming on to the podcast.
Absolutely. So Mike, you can't get out that easy. You got 2 questions before we get rid of you. Okay, and I'm pumped about this because I've never been to Africa. I'm assuming that you've been to more than just Nigeria and Africa. So I love travel questions. I travel a lot. And so I want to know of a place that most people would not think to go. And we talked about this off air about how, Africa doesn't really promote tourism as much as it should. And so what is like 1 or 2 gems that Americans like me would not know or ever consider visiting as a tourist that I should put on the bucket list?
I mean, like, look, I'm gonna be biased and say Lagos. 100%. I think that the energy that emanates from this city is infectious for me. Like, like I said, I'm born and brought up in the UK. The UK. If you know anyone from the UK, they're quite conservative, and whatnot. I think like living in Africa has put a different color, in my life. As much as there are challenges, like we laugh and we play and we kind of like figure out solutions to all of our problems. I think that, and maybe this isn't the right combo for a holiday, but I think that it kind of like wakes one up. And I think I've seen a lot of Americans, Europeans, they live these lives where you press a button and the light comes on, you turn on the tap and water comes out the tap, clean water comes out the tap, and things are so easy, right? And I think that sometimes people need that wake up call. Come and see where there's life, there's opportunity, there's energy, but there's also a massive amount of challenges. I think it makes you appreciate, some of I guess the life that a lot of people in the West lead. But not just that. I mean, like the clubs are crazy, strip clubs are mad. We have some of the best music coming out of the continent. This music coming out of Lagos, right, is world beating music. I mean, like, I'm a big hip hop head back in the day, but these days I don't listen to much else other than Afro beats. And it's killing it. I mean, from streaming services to the clubs, Burna Boy did MSG, Wizkid has done MSG now, out in New York, doing big tours, big stadiums out in the US, UK. So, but if you get to Africa, if you get to Lagos, you get to see where the energy from these artists come from. The food is amazing. Jollof rice is the best rice you're ever going to taste in your life, right? And I mean, to be honest, you need to obviously hang out with someone like me in Lagos, and I'm always open. I'm always happy to welcome. I'm always happy to welcome my brothers and my sisters out to Lagos. That's number one. And then I think on the other end of the continent, for me, Cape Town is always a dope spot. Amazing food in Cape Town, really well-priced food, amazing scenery, Camps Bay, like just amazing wine farms. You drive across the countryside and you just eat great food, drink great wine, enjoy great weather, meet great people. And they have, some of the most amazing hotels in Cape Town. So I think, yeah, for the exciting, or the kind of like the traveler that wants that excitement, come hang out in Lagos. But if you just want to like drink
Lagos
great
NFT,
wine, great food, Cape Town.
So we got to get you out on this. We ask every guest because we're all about banging it out, and you brought it on yourself, brother. What's one guest that you would like to see on the podcast? And the caveat is that you have to help us get them. So you could take it easy, or you could kind of put a real banger out.
I want to see Upscale Vandal on this pod, man.
All right.
I want to see him on this pod, like 100%. I mean, I follow him on Twitter. I can't say I know him, but I don't mind hitting him up in the DMs and telling him, look, yo, Upscale, you believe in Aku, right? You've got the Vandal helmets, right? Come and like give us your expose, what you feel about the community, what you understand about NFTs, and where you think this is all going, because you're an influencer. And, we need your voice, so that's definitely someone I love to see. It can be anyone, right? It wasn't necessarily like a moon god.
Anyway,
I don't know if Upscale's a moon god.
You have to help us get them. That's the thing.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I can hit. I'm in his DMs. Don't worry, man. As soon as we get off this call,
there we go.
I'm in his DMs.
All right. That's beautiful, man. Lovox, any last words?
No, beautiful.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
I had an expectation coming in that this was going to be fire. And I mean, you burnt the whole damn forest down, brother. I think this has been one of the better ones. Amazing way to kick off 2023, and I think that what you're doing is so important, and it just goes to show you like how global NFTs, but certainly Aku is. And when I first started following you and found out, like, I love watching all your clips and your videos, and you're out there like, you're really doing it, as opposed to what we have here in LA sometimes, where they're standing in front of somebody else's Lambo pretending, and I think I've always had friends, two of my best friends, Wilson and Sheun, from Nigeria. So I've always known how passionate and intelligent like your country is, and I hate all the negative press that you guys get, but you're an example that you can't judge any book by its cover, and you're killing it. Happy to be a moon god alongside with you, and let's take it to the moon this year, right?
Amen, amen. Thanks so much for having me on the pod, man. And it's not easy what you guys do, like, you know, making sure these calls get set up, you know, as in like talking to us, kind of like driving the narrative forward. I love it. I'll continue to share it. I'll continue to like definitely, you know, big ups you guys. Anything you need to just share on my pages, you know, if I'm at events or whatnot. You know, I'll do it, man, because I think we need more of this. And it is how you drive the space forward, each of us doing our own little things. I mean, at my last Meta Phrase dinner in December, you know, I used my Aku as like the invite and everything. The year before I used my Bored Ape, and I was like I used my Mega OG, and I was like, look, this is how we need to drive the space forward. So the pod you're doing, the conversations you're having with the moon gods and with people, you know, who love Aku, it's very necessary. And I love it. And this is the time to be having it. When people think there's nothing going on, we're here building, we're here working, we're here trying to grow. We can't put everything on Micah and the team. We have vested interests, and so it's on us. So big ups what you guys are doing, man. I love it.
And for all the viewers, if you have made it this far, of course you already know, like, comment, subscribe. I would actually do a call to action and say, like, certainly like retweet or post, and just give your thoughts on like the content that we touched on, especially this particular episode, because I think we touched on a lot of, you know, deep issues, not just within Aku, but just in the NFT community. So for JwowLax, for I am Meta Mike, I want to say thank you, gentlemen, and we will see you next time.